Mm, awesome. We're waiting for a few more people to populate before we get started here. Sorry about all the technical difficulties that we're having. You want to make a comment in the post? Let us know. Give us a quick heads up that you're here. I see we have 5 viewers so far. I believe Amanda's posting on the other side to let things know that that's going on. Yay. We'll just give it a couple more minutes here. Thanks everybody for being so patient with all of this. As we start populating through, if you guys want to pop into the comments, leave your biggest concern about our topic today, give us a hello. Um, Hi. Sorry, I'm texting with Amanda real quick, trying to make sure we get everybody over here before we get started. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with everything that we need to discuss about apprenticeships here. Some people will be watching this on repeat as we go through, and we want to make sure that everybody gets the information that they want to be able to get as they go along. So feel free to ask your questions. Hello, Kristen. Hello, Catherine Newberry. I'm so glad to see some friendly faces here. Um, I wanted to kind of start this out with a little bit about who I am and what I do and why I'm sitting here talking to you. I know there's going to be a lot of people in Iowa that are going to watch this later and probably have questions, and this will probably go into the historics for what's going on. In regards to HF 711, I'm actually not going to talk about what's in the bill for a hot second. What we did want to share is what is actually already in place and the dynamics of the apprenticeship that already exists in the state of Iowa. So that's kind of going to be the focus of the conversation. So feel free to throw questions into the comment box. If I don't get to them right away, we'll be watching these over the next couple days. And if you're watching this on repeat, please feel free to throw those questions in there as well. So the big question is, who are you? Where'd you come from? Why are you talking about this? What's going on? Well, my name's Jesse Skittrell, and I'm actually the program founder and coordinator for a program called the Autorashi Apprentice Program. We are a federally approved Department of Labor beauty apprenticeships for the beauty trades specifically. We have over 750 apprentices and over 500 training partners nationally. We operate this program in multiple states, and Iowa happens to be one of them. Now, alongside of that, we are also what is an appointed Department of Labor apprenticeship ambassador for this industry. So outside of I have my own program that people can participate in, I help other people write their own programs and create their own programs and bring them to life. That's part of my job where the Department of Labor is concerned. So ultimately, I know quite a bit about apprenticeships in our trade and how they're done. And I've been seeing a lot of misunderstanding or miscommunication about exactly what a DOL apprenticeship is and how this differs from HF 711 that has obviously sparked a lot of conversation. And I just wanted to get clarity. I'm not here to convince anybody to think one direction or the other. I just want to create clarity around what the existing program is and answer questions and what it can and cannot do. So let's start off a little bit with the historicals of how did we get here? What exactly happened? And this has kind of been a cluster F, for lack of a better word. It's Sunday. I won't swear completely. I'll just partially swear. This has been a little bit of a cluster F. And the reason being is kind of the perfect storm of information that has been going on. And what happened was coming out of the pandemic in 2020, in 2022, apprenticeships became a legal avenue to licensure through a Department of Labor apprenticeship in 2022. It was put in place by Kim Reynolds along with several other apprenticeships. It was quietly done. It was not, there was no big fanfare about it. It kind of showed up on the laws and in the statute, and then the state board had to go exercise against that type of thing. So it's not new. It's been here since 2022. It's a well-refined machine. It's actually working really, really well. Now, and personally in our program, we've graduated 25 apprentices and gotten them to licensure just in the state of Iowa since 2022. I know there's other programs outside of ours as well. So that happened kind of quietly. And I mean, we have the statutes, the laws, the rules. I have a letter from the governor. We connected with Venice Food Race, so I'm not making anything up. This is actually statute that's been around already for an extended period of time. And it's going to come as a shocker to a lot of Iowans that are in the industry because we didn't know about it. It just kind of happened. And we have spent literally since 2022, our organization, we have been pounding the pavement trying to get this word out with the beauty industry inside the state of Iowa. And people have a tendency to not believe us that this has already been something that's been around for an extended period of time. So that happened. But then what happened shortly thereafter is, as we all know, both the boards, the barbering board and the cosmetology board combined, and they went underneath the direction of a new office. So they went from being under the direction of this office to being under the direction of this office, which meant the whole executive staff that manages everything changed. So literally, apprenticeship got launched. Both boards combined together, and the offices actually changed almost simultaneously at the same time. And the occupations were combined, and we had barbering put into cosmetology, so we have now have barber cosmetology. All of that happened at the same time, and leadership changed simultaneously at the very top of everything. So nobody knew what the hell was going on anywhere. There was lots of panic and chaos. At the same time, in the state of Iowa, the Department of Labor office, which was a federally appointed office in Iowa, became a state appointing agency. So a whole another agency took over the contract for Department of Labor inside the state of Iowa. And now we had a whole new thing going on, and we had a whole new direction. So it was kind of this perfect storm for misunderstanding and misinformation. And that's really what's happened. So if you've tried to create a apprenticeship or get any information about it, nobody knew what the hell was going on. Nobody knew what was going on inside of it, what's included, what's not included. And we're just now getting some form of clarity. And then this begins to happen to us. So that's kind of the long and short of it. So the big question I kind of wanted to start off with a little bit is, how do you go about getting a Department of Labor apprenticeship, and why is this different than what's out there? Now, Department of Labor historically has done apprenticeships in the trades for well over 80 years, coming up actually on 100 years that they've been doing this. So there's a structure and a way that it gets to happen in a very specific way, and we have to follow those rules. So it's very heavily regulated, and this is done in tandem with the state board's expectations. So this is not a separate piece from the state board. This is actually done in tandem with the state board, and let me explain how that works. So I'm going to get very technical. Hi, Michelle Golden. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you. Well, it's lovely to see some of our players that participate in our program. So thank you. If you guys can give us a shout out, that would be absolutely great. So how do you go about doing a program? So as an ambassador, I like to let people know, while I have a program of my own where we could do multi-employer sponsor, if you said, hey, hi, Doug, how are you doing? Hi, Doug. Are they still, Doug's question, I'm going to answer it real quick because I'm glad you're here, Doug. Jesse, are they still debating this? I believe it is a federal issue. There's no, it's not being debated. That's the problem. There's no debate about it. It's already in statute, has been in statute since 2022. That's not going away. This bill is talking about creating a separate, a third avenue, but we're really not here to talk about that. I want you guys to compare and contrast that, but understand how you do a DOL program. So now, with that being said, you can write your own Department of Labor program as well if you so chose to do that. So I wanted to kind of outline what that involves so you understand the regulation that's involved in this. This isn't just, hey, make a phone call and yay, so you're going to start training, happy day. There's actually some work that's put into it. And if you choose to do the work, that's great. I will help you do that and walk you through the process. Or if you're just a busy salon owner and you want to get people working, Michelle Golden's a great example. You can work underneath our umbrella and you can get going right away with it. So there's lots of different ways. And maybe this is too much work for you, and that's absolutely okay if you want to do this. If you don't want to participate, but know that this is an opportunity and know that this is actually pretty heavily regulated. So the process that is involved in becoming a DOL apprenticeship program starts off with the request with the Department of Labor. You give them a call, or you actually go online and say, hey, I want to do this apprenticeship thing. And they go, okay. The first thing you're going to do is you have to write what's called standards. Now, if anybody in here has owned a beauty school or gone to cosmetology school, you know they have a catalog or a policy manual that's already been looked at, usually by the state board. This is our version of that, but it's looked at by the Department of Labor. And one of the reasons the Department of Labor is a really great choice for apprenticeship is this is an apprenticeship. A true apprenticeship is an employer-employee relationship that happens to have education attached to it. So I want to say that one more time. This is an employer-employee relationship that happens to have education attached to it. Now, because of that employer-employee relationship, that means that this has to be oversighted with Department of Labor, because they're going to be the ones that are going to protect the apprentice. They're also going to protect the training partner, and they're going to have a structure in place. But we're also going to address what the expectations for the state board are. So inside of these standards that we're going to write, which is basically how you have to conduct your program, and we are held to these standards. We actually get reviews on them every 18 months or so. They do a compliance review on that. So it's a planned review of when we're going to be taking a look at. And I apologize if I don't comment on your comment. I will come back and make sure I comment on this afterwards as well. So the first thing you're going to do is set up your standards. Inside of your standards, they're going to help you write what's your disciplinary action, what's your interview process, how are you going to pay this apprentice. They have to have pay progressions, so they have to be making at least minimum wage at the very beginning. How are you going to do that? At what points are you going to actually increase their wages? Now, in our industry, tips count for that as well. So if you're doing pay progressions, tips count. So these have to be an employee situation. Um, in the pay progressions. And then as you go through the whole process, it's going to give you some very, what we call boilerplate language. It's very well structured and says they have to be at least 16, they have to have their GED or high school equivalency, here's the requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to be very, very clear on what you do. The most important, and that's standard how all apprenticeships work, period. It doesn't matter. You don't get an option to recreate those standards. That's how everything works, whether you're an electrician, whether you're a plumber, or whether you're a food handler, or whether you're a barber or cosmetologist. We're all held to those same set of standards over and over. Now, one of the things that happens in those is the discussion on hours. And this is where we as the beauty industry have a little bit of a head block for just a hot second, is we have a tendency to think when we think hours, we think that means time, because that's what we do with a state board program. That's not necessarily true when you're talking about DOL apprenticeship. Even though we use the language of time, it's not always about time. So when you're setting up your standards, you can actually write it in one of three ways. You can have your program be time bound, which is what we're used to, punch the clock, clinic floor time. You can have it be competency based. Show me what you got. You get credit for the hours. Let me say that again. Competency based, meaning show me you know the skill set and you get credit for the hours. And then the third way is called, right in the middle, is called hybrid, which can use either or. Now, typically, if you're working with somebody who's fresh to the industry, you're going to be bound by time bound. If you're working with somebody who comes with skills, maybe they've dropped out of cosmetology school, maybe they're an immigrant, whatever the case may be is, I'm going to use a competency-based program. So I get the choice because I'm a hybrid to be able to do that. That's the types of things that are written into your standards. Now, there are two sets of hours that have to be accomplished here, and they separate them out. And if you've taught cosmetology school, you'll understand this a little bit. We have what's called OJT or OJL, on the job training or on the job learning. That's actual physical clocked time on the floor, working with clients, working with customers, working with staff, answering phones, sweeping floors, any of that. Every OJT and OJL hour has to be paid. And this is what I really want you to hear. There's no such thing as a program anywhere in the United States under registered apprenticeship program that is less than 2,000 hours. And the reason I say that is because in our industry, when you talk about the state boards, every state is different. That is not the way it is with Department of Labor. There is no such thing as a program less than 2,000 hours. Now, 2,000 hours of OJT, if you were to do a full-time schedule, 32 to 40 hours a week, would get you about 1 year's worth of time. So the program is at least going to be 2,000 hours. And everybody gets their panties in a wad over that because they go, oh, beauty school is less hours, et cetera, et cetera. But if you weren't in school, what would you be doing? You'd be working and you'd be collecting a paycheck, which that's exactly what these are doing. So you're already working, you'd be working either way, collecting a paycheck. So you're already doing it. So the hours are kind of a moot point in how they have to be done. But the reason DOL does that with OJT is they believe not just the fundamental teaching, but proficiency. Key word here is proficiency cannot be achieved in less than 2,000 hours. And the goal of registered apprenticeship isn't just licensure, while that's part of it, it is proficiency at the end of it. And I don't know about you guys, if you're a salon owner like I have been, I spend more of my time with these freshly licensed kids trying to get them to proficient. Now we're spending time just getting them to hold scissors before we can get them proficient, even when they come licensed. So why not just do that all in apprenticeship? So the first set of hours is OJT or OJL. The second set of hours is called RI, related instruction. Related instruction is the classroom time. So that's going to be when they're taking tests, when they're reading, when you're demonstrating the haircut, when they're practicing the haircut, any of that stuff that's inside of classroom time. Now, RI, related instruction, is not a paid activity, so we don't pay them to sit in the classroom. We only pay them when they're actually on the floor doing actual work with clients, or assisting, or answering phones, or doing any of that happy jazz that's in the salon. So you have to achieve both sets of these hours simultaneously. Now, the DOL standard rule is there's no less than 144 hours of RI per 2,000 hours of OJT. So that's a minimum. Now, the state of Iowa's board has come back and said, we want 550 hours of related instruction. So they've gone over and above, to which the Department of Labor said, oh, okay, that's greater than the 144. So here you go. So you have to have a minimum of 2,000 hours of on the job training and 550 hours of related instruction. Now, it sounds like a lot. So that's 2,550 hours basically. But those 550 hours, because they're in a hybrid program, it basically we use what's called evidentiary material, and finish the assignment, finish the test, and you get assigned a percentage of those hours. Do the demonstration and prove to me that you've done the demonstration, and you get a percentage of those hours. So it's not as physical and it's not as actually time bound as people begin to think that it is. So you're going to define all of that in your standards. You're going to get that all written out. The biggest area, and this is where I come into play a lot, is in what's called a work processes. Now, in work processes, you have to break down exactly how much time and in what areas you're going to focus on in OJT and in related instruction. Now, it sounds daunting. Your regular salon owner really doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to do that, to understand what work processes are. Work processes are a combination of a couple of things. The scope of practice, so we go over to the state board and we look at the scope of practice, which we know in Iowa is going to be barber cosmetology. So it's going to have everything, including shaving, all of that happy jazz. So you're a lot more than other areas. And we're going to put all of those subjects into the work processes. And we're going to break that down and say they're going to spend so much time on each one. Now, in related instruction, we're going to do the same thing, but what is the classroom time there? So what we take a look at is what is actually on the test. What are they tested on? So we go to the CIB, which is the Candidate Information Bulletin that's provided by, I believe you guys are PSI in the state of Iowa. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but every state has one. It's basically what's included on the test and what categories. And that's really what we teach when we talk about the fundamentals. And then we take, obviously, the curriculum is going to be a huge part of that. We now, in our organization, we use Pivot Point. There's only two curriculums you can use, Pivot Point or Milady. You can use either or. So we take the Pivot Point, we take all the chapters in Pivot Point and break them down and align them with what's done with the CIB. And that's what the work processes are going to do. And you're going to build out that chart, and it's going to total out to 2,000 hours of OJT and total out to 550 hours of RI. Now, where I come into place, and this is common practice as a apprenticeship ambassador to the industry, the director of the Department of Labor in Iowa, when they see that they're writing a beauty program, will call me and say, can you help us with the work processes? Because that's very specific to our industry. And they do this with plumbers, they do this with electricians, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I've done is I've actually created work processes for both Milady and for Pivot Point and given them copies of it. This is exactly what the breakdown needs to look like to make things a little bit easier, because otherwise you as the salon owner would have to come up with that. And that just isn't going to be very feasible. So that's kind of how that goes. Now, you write all this out, you put it into a big long document, it goes into a notebook. I think I actually have a set of mine right here. Yep, I do. I have 50 notebooks that look just like this, and it's got about 75 pages. It's got all those standards that are built into it. And then that gets submitted to the Department of Labor for approval. And it will go through 4 layers of approval before it actually gets approved to be a certified program. So they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and it might get kicked back a couple times. They'll come back and say, oh, this can't say this, it needs to say this, or it needs to say this, or it'll eventually get approved. And that process can take a little bit of time. You're working behind the chair, you're a busy salon owner, that's very difficult to do. But some salon owners have it. They can easily handle those types of things and that type of work. And once you go through that process, and it can take, be as quick or as slow as possible. Sorry, I'm watching the questions as they come through. So I promise if I don't answer your question, I will come back and type out an answer for you as well. So you're going to create that whole set of standards. You're going to go through that approval process. At the very end, they're going to put you into what they call a provisional program. So you have 1 year to prove that you know what you're talking about. And at the end of that 1 year, they are going to look to make sure that you've ran an apprentice and that you're in compliance with all of the factors, meaning that we have a reporting process. We have one national portal that we have to report into. Have you gotten your agreement signed by the apprentice? Have you gotten the employer agreements? Are you tracking the hours? They look at all of these things, and they have access to that on a daily basis, and you'll run that apprentice through. That's a lot to do. That is a lot of paperwork. That's a lot of minutia. That's a lot of detail for your average salon owner to do. I totally get that. It's not really built for everybody. Now, there's some salons, if you have multi-location salons and you have an owner that's not behind a chair, this might actually be a great program for you. We can help you write that. In our program, you can actually fly underneath our program. We can bring you into compliance in our program, and then we help you manage through the program. And we assign you a learning leader or somebody in our organization that kind of walks you through the process, as I saw Trish was saying a little bit before. So it's not and I wanted to put that out there because somebody was saying, oh, we need to revamp the apprenticeship program and see if we can get lower hours. It's not going to happen because there's a federal mandate on the 2,000 hours, which I think as an industry, if we really talk to ourselves a little bit and we reflect back, that 2,000 hours is vitally important. And one of the reasons I say that works is to give you some key metrics of what can happen inside of an apprenticeship program that happens inside of ours. We have a 86% completion rate. We have a 93% retention to the salon 3 years after licensure, a 97% first time pass rate to the exam, and we have a 75% productivity rate, meaning that apprentice typically, when they're done, is working at a 75% productivity. For those of you that are salon owners, that's usually a 3-year number that fresh out of school kid is still trying to hit 3 years later. And the reason behind that is because we built in proficiency, and they have built a business inside of your salon at the same time. So some other key points that I wanted to mention about a program like this, just to prepare some misinformation. Inside of a DOL program, we have something called PCE, Previous Credit for Experience. So we have autonomy to recognize up to a certain percentage of the hours get assigned based off of documented previous credit for experience. That can be she collected hours and went to cosmetology school and dropped out, or they're a barber becoming a Cosmo, or they're an immigrant coming over and they've done hair for 30 years across the pond and now they're coming over here. There's lots of, or maybe they're a medical assistant coming into the industry. We can get, there's a lot of anatomy and physiology and things like that that cross over that we can give credit for those types of things. So we have a lot more flexibility for previous credit for experience that's built inside of those. The second part is when the apprentice gets done, because the question is always, how does this lead to licensure? When the apprentice gets done, they get a completion certificate from the federal government that says they've done this program. That completion certificate is what we supply the state board so that they are allowed to sit for the exact same exam that everybody else takes. Now, we in our organization, we put them through an exam prep module so they're prepared to take the exam, and we test them till we're blue in the face to make sure they can pass it. Because as most of you know, our exam really has nothing to do with your ability to do hair. It has everything to do with safety and sanitation in the context of doing hair. So we kind of have to change their mindset from being a hairdresser producing behind the chair into this testing mentality, and that really takes a little bit of coaching on our side. That certificate is what we supply that allows the state board to know that they can then test and take the same licensure exam, and they are issued the exact same license as everybody else. Now, what's nice about the completion certificate is it has reciprocity with any state. So if they were to move out of state for some reason, their license didn't have reciprocity with that state, their training certificate would, because it's a federal document from the federal government that has to be recognized in every single state. Sorry, I'm looking at some of my notes here to make sure that I crossed everything. But I wanted to take this moment to kind of explain how a DOL program works so that you can understand a little bit more clarity on how it's regulated, how it's implemented in the salon. It's not nilly-willy, and it's very regimented in how it's managed and it's oversighted. And you do actually have a fantastic DOL director. He is absolutely wonderful to work with and a delight in your state. His name's Chris Kula by chance. And really understanding how the standards were, the competency based, and understand that the Department of Labor is working in tandem with the state board. So while they are the final say where apprenticeship is concerned, because there is protections for the apprentice, if there was to be some abuse, they're the ones that would be the ones to step in. They are definitely looking at making sure those work processes are taught and all of those pieces are taught, because there's a lot of discussion around the safety and sanitation piece and so on and so forth. And you and I know we don't need somebody to sit in front of us to discuss what bacteria looks like, flagella, et cetera, et cetera. This is 2025. There are ways that we can consume and measure that information without having to sit in a classroom and really make sure that somebody understands exactly what's there. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not here as a commercial for my organization. If you want to participate, you're more than welcome to. I'll make a point of putting our organization's information in there. If you wanted to put together your own DOL program, we definitely will help you write one. We sell the curriculum as well, or if you wanted just assistance, it doesn't cost anything for the assistance to help you get a program written and to walk you through what all of the steps are, if that's something that you want to do. So let me see if we'll start at the top and we'll answer some of these questions. Is this helpful information? Give me some thumbs up, some hearts, some likes. Are you all going to meet me out in the parking lot with a bat and knock me over or whatever the case maybe is? Hi, Michelle. I'm so glad to see Doug here. It's great. This video, as Amanda said, this video will be up for 30 days for rewatch. Thank you, Michelle. I love how easy it was to get going with Pivot Point Education. It was all set up for us just to jump in. Shaylee, my apprentice, is doing amazing. That's the one thing that's interesting about this. Thank you for saying that, Michelle. That's interesting about this is when people get involved, oftentimes they make it harder in their head than it needs to be. You know, I'm teaching beauty school. They don't go in a back classroom, sit for 4 weeks, and then come out. They're not standing over your shoulder watching. They're working. Think of this as an implemented employee. They're on the front desk, they're on the phone, they're booking clients, they're doing your shampoos, your blow dries. Ultimately, eventually, you're working them into being a full stylist. And they, by the time they're done with the program, they should look, act, walk, and feel like any level one service provider in your location. Oftentimes, what we find is salons make it harder in their head than it needs to be, but they'll start their first apprentice and about 30 days in, they'll call me and they'll go, this is way easier than I thought it was going to be. Because it's a one-on-one relationship, I don't have 25 students and I don't have to undo anything the beauty school taught them. And this is not a dig on beauty schools. This doesn't do away with beauty schools. Beauty schools have their place and they work side by side beautifully with apprenticeship. This isn't about one or the other. This is about both are decent avenues to exactly where they need to be. Where apprenticeship fits the bill a little bit better is in rural communities where beauty schools are quite a distance away. Why shouldn't they be able to go down to Betty's Beauty Box and learn from Betty and stay in their environment? Oftentimes, what happens is they move to the big city, they end up in Des Moines, and they never move back, and you've just moved the money out of the community, and it gets very difficult. So, apprenticeship makes sense a lot in rural markets. It works really, really well. So, it's just a secondary avenue. Cosmetology schools do something a little bit different. Now, because I'm not spending, this person has never gone to cosmetology school and it's a one on one relationship, they've never seen it done differently. They only know to mimic you or whoever the top stylist is. They've only seen you retail. They've only seen you rebook. They've only seen you ask for the referral. They've only seen you hold the brush left handed. Great example. I'm ambidextrous. My mentor was my uncle. I come from 6 generations of hairdressers. My mom and my grandmother owned a cosmetology school. My uncle owned a salon about 4 blocks away, and he was the wig master for the Seattle Opera. I learned to blow dry from him. He's left handed. I have been blow drying hair for years till somebody said, do you know you blow dry left handed? I had no clue because I didn't know to do it differently. I had only watched him, so I only mimic him. So that's what ends up happening is they mimic you and they become a, for lack of a better word, a cloned version of you within your salon company. So it's a really great way to do it very, very quickly. And yes, thanks, Trish. We walk you through, our team walks you through everything step by step, and you have a devoted person that's called your learning leader. Amy says, how is this a benefit for the salon or stylist offering the apprenticeship? Does the stylist get paid for offering the program? So that is an excellent question. So this isn't for everybody. So please don't think of this in terms of everybody. But if you're looking to grow your staff inside of your salon company, this is a really great way to grow your staff. Now, how do we get financial assistance for this? Because this is an employee and they have to be paid like an employee. They have to make minimum wage. There is an investment here that goes into somebody. You're investing in somebody. So you have to be able to see the return on your investment at some point. So the first thing I would say is when you do this, there's a couple of different things. Make sure you hire right and you pick right. There's so many people get into our industry and think that we stand around, put on lip gloss and gossip all day long, and it's just fun. And then they learn that we learn chemistry and we have to do all this stuff and we stand on our feet and we work evenings and weekends and they drop like flies. And that's what happens in cosmetology school as well. So you have to vet your apprentice very well if you're going to invest in this. So you need to know them. You need to know them very well, make sure they job shadow. And we give you some ideas and ways to be able to interview that to find out if that person has that because you're investing in them. You're going to make an investment initially in the beginning in all of the teaching because it can't really produce as of yet. Where the money comes into place is actually on the backside of it. Once they can produce, they can begin to blow dry and style on every busy hairdresser. If you just thought for a second, if I could just take the shampoos and blow dries off of my books and hand them to somebody else, you're going to be 25 to 30% more productive. So just handing that simple act of handing those over there, and we show you how to integrate an apprentice in a way that's smooth. So it's not just Susie Q decided to start blow drying hair today. There's a process to this of how you introduce an apprentice into a salon in a smooth way that's going to make that happen for you. So the benefit is on the return on investment over here. And then obviously, as they're producing services, they're getting paid a wage. And you can either move them onto commission or you can collect the dollars for the services that they're there. The one thing I tell people is you don't have to charge discounted services for them. So, which sounds really odd because it's an apprentice. You can charge full fare for them, and I highly recommend that level one pricing is where they need to sit. Now, until their skill sets up to that level one pricing, you may want to say there's a temporary discount on that level one, like 25% off, 50% off, or whatever, and then slowly grow them up to that level one pricing. So they're charging level one as they're building their skill set. But you're collecting those dollars for work that's happening over here in your chair. And that's the counter on the investment is I'm investing in you. I need a return on my investment. This is how we're going to be able to do this. So that helps a little bit. Now, the second part is because they're in a DOL registered apprenticeship program, you can actually apply. And I want to caveat this, this is not financial aid, not FAFSA, not Pell, but there is opportunities for financial assistance through workforce development boards. That would be your I think they're called One Stop in Iowa offices. There's something called WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Now, this is not a guarantee, and these are grants that the workforce development boards are given to help people get on their feet in the community. So, if your apprentice goes through their coaching systems, which is very easy to do, and they can usually qualify if they have a need, like a single mom, if they were a displaced worker or a veteran or whatever. There's 49 points that they can look at to qualify somebody for some form of WIOA dollars, and those can be used to offset our costs as an organization, the kit costs, or to even reimburse some of the wages and dollars that you've invested in this person for a set period of time. Now, I caveat that because there has to be a need for the apprentice. Your workforce development agency has to agree to using those dollars, and it is a grant, which means the money can run out at any point. They budget and allocate money for this, but they move it around, and once the money's out, it's done and it's gone. Um, Becky says, what about those of us that attended school before cosmetology and barber were joined together? We need additional training in order to apprentice for the barbering side of things? No, you do not need additional training for what's there. The, the harsh reality here, whether you're in school or wherever you're at, is we in the state of Iowa, we only have a written exam. So you have to understand the concepts good enough to get past that because you don't actually have to demonstrate the skill. So that's nice for those that are barbers, because we're experiencing this with some of the barbers, as I'm sure you understand, having a hard time passing the test. Because guess what? They didn't get taught the remainder of that. So we're having to come back and teach them those so that they can at least get to the test. They're never going to color hair. They're never going to perm hair. They just want to cut and shave. The same thing is going to happen on the flip side. So if you have enough information to be able to pass the safety and sanitation piece on the test, you're just fine. And a lot of that can be taught in a theoretical part in my organization. Amy says, um, yes, but only if you want to get licensed in straight razor. You guys do already have the 40-hour certification thing that you're supposed to go through anyway to be able to straight shave with your license. But it's craziness. Does each apprentice learn, Janet says, does each apprentice learn all areas of hair such as colors, perms, along with cuts and razors? Great question. Yes. So we are indemnified to teach the whole process. Now, if your salon company doesn't do something like manicures, pedicures, or whatever the case may be, is you have to be able to teach that. So oftentimes what'll happen is somebody that was comfortable doing it in cosmetology school can teach it as a journeyman in your salon. Or I have several salons actually that partner with the nail salon next door or a couple doors down, and they do a trade and come teach my apprentice how to do manicures and pedicures, and we'll teach your apprentices how to do sanitation or whatever the case may be is. So you can do a trade situation like that. You don't have to offer it on your menu. So oftentimes, like the facial piece, we'll do the facials at the shampoo bowl. We'll get a little bucket and get in the back room and do some pedicures on our girlfriend or whatever the case may be. So we want to make sure that they've at least at a minimum touched it and experienced it and have enough authority to be able to talk about it on their test as well. So, but yes, you are expected to do the full scope of practice. Chris says Chris is very supportive, knowledgeable, and a huge cheerleader to our industry. Yes, Chris Kula, the director of the Department of Licensing Labor, he is fantastic. You guys really lucked out. Oh, Ryan. Hey, hi, Ryan. Ryan just recently graduated our program and got licensed. Congratulations. Janet, I'm glad you found this informative. Scott says, I'm thankful for the clarity on the apprenticeship program. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Um, Will you depict the differences with the new bill? Okay, Renee asked, will I compare and contrast? I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you guys to compare and contrast. I will give you my thoughts, but please don't take my word for it. Go read the bill and see what's there. The challenge I see with the bill that is currently being proposed is kind of a half, and I want to be polite when I say this, it's a half-baked concept of what's already here with DOL. So it's a mere attempt on the state board level. The challenge is the state board really isn't equipped resources wise to manage apprenticeship because again, this is a one-on-one relationship and tracking all of that is going to become a complete nightmare for them. Number two, the state board's job is public safety. It has no employee protections. It has no employer protections. Apprenticeship is an employer-employee opportunity that looks through that lens. That lives at DOL. That does not live over in the state board. So things get really messy. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of learning curve and unintended consequences that come along with a state board ran program that cause a lot of confusion in a situation like this, as well as the scope of practice that they're talking about in the bill is very limited. So it's going to create a limit. It's going to actually create a what ultimately what this is an effort to create a limited license situation. When the reality is, we just need to go back to the state board and create a barber, not state board, legislature, and create a law that has an occupation that's a stylist barber. So great question. Um, Tom says, thanks for thoroughly explaining the existing program. Can you explain the differences from this bill and that one that has passed? The bill actually has only passed the Senate. It has not gotten all the way through. So understand how the legislative process works. You have the two sides of your house. You have the representatives and you have the Senate. It gets presented in one side or the other in a committee and in an initial reading. They pass it and then it goes to one side or the other. It has gone to the Senate. Over here, it has to go back to the representatives for a reading as well, and then they have to vote on it, and then it goes back for again, once it passes there, it goes back into another reading. From there, it gets voted on again in the original house that it came from, and then from there, it goes back to the governor's desk for signature to be put into law. And the governor has the opportunity to veto these types of things. And I would, if you're depending upon where you feel you want to make sure you support whatever layer of that, maybe reaching out to the governor. And then once the governor signs it, and then it usually becomes law at that point. Now, the one thing I can tell you, in having done lots of legislation, they're probably going to have to put this into what's called a fiduciary review. And a fiduciary review is going to look at how much is this going to cost the state board to put into place, and et cetera, et cetera. So that could slow everything down, even if it's implemented into law. Ryan says, my experience, you leave apprenticeship with clients, but because you've been cutting with a local versus moving to an outside space or city, yes, you have an instant build to your clientele. Um, Amy says, love learning all this. I went through WIOA. Jay, yeah, I like to hear that. ROI for the salon owners, molding beauty professionals. Yeah, and you get long time. What we found is the person that apprentices with you, whether it's in this kind of a program or not, typically is the longest lasting employee that you have in a salon company. Tom says, you only have to find a school or organization that offers the 40 hours in shaving course, yes, and send the certification to the state. Yes, good luck. That's been part of the challenge, is it's not profitable for schools to be able to do it. So it's been very difficult to be able to find those. If you have a resource, please feel free to post it here. Um, does the proposed bill have different requirements for licensure through apprenticeship? Less hours, less teaching. Their goal, no, it's 2,000 hours. They're looking at, from what I've read so far, the new bill is talking about a 2,000-hour program. And the people that are supporting this on the other side and have brought this forward even mentioned that this could be turned into a DOL apprenticeship and so on and so forth. So just my personal opinion, this all feels very duplicative and a stretch of resources. That's just my opinion, uh, for what it's worth. So I hope that helps. I hope this helps. Feel free to add comments to this if you're watching this on the replay or you think about something. We do have a message thread that goes with this. I will make a point of adding our Adarashi information here. And if you decide you want to create your own program for your salon company as well, if you didn't want to participate underneath our umbrella, please hit the button on our website. You can get a hold of me here at this. I'll put it in the comments. And we will definitely help you. There's three big buttons on the very front. I want to work under you guys basically as a training partner, or I want to create my own program, or I want to be an apprentice. And you can let us know how you want to participate. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. I really do truly want to grow our stakeholders and the future generations in the state of Iowa. I do see there is a definite need, specifically in the rural market. I hope this helps with some clarity. If you have anybody that feels like they want to participate, please don't be shy. Reach out. I will put my email in here as well. .org. This is what I do all day long now. I am a hairdresser, and this is what I do all day long, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So I hope everybody has a lovely Sunday. I have taken up an hour of your time, and enjoy, have fun, and be kind to each other.